The house never stopped creaking. Even when the wind slept and the sun stood still in the sky, something in the old beams muttered like a disgruntled elder. To 12-year-old Tunde, the place felt alive, though never on his side. Whenever he stepped into the courtyard, the shadows arranged themselves as if bracing for trouble. You are welcome to my channel, my dearest listeners. Before we continue this story, I want to ask you for a small favor. If you like my stories, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. In the comments, let me know which country you are listening from. It gladdens my heart to know where my listeners are based. Thank you. He arrived 2 months after his father married Madame Selina, a woman who carried herself as if she had been carved from marble and polished with vinegar. Her footsteps clicked like a judge's gavel, and the air around her always trembled with a warning too quiet for adults, but perfectly audible to a child. Tunde's father believed he had married grace. Tunde suspected he had married a storm disguised as perfume. The first morning after he moved in, he tiptoed into the kitchen, drawn by the promise of warm akara. Selina stood there already, slicing plantains with surgical precision. Her gaze lifted to him with the warmth of an iced window. "You," she said, each letter clipped short. "Why are you hovering?" I wanted breakfast," he murmured. She turned back to the plantains. Children who eat before completing their chores grow up with entitlement problems. Tunde blinked. "What chores?" "Exactly," she replied, handing him a broom tall enough to double as a walking stick. Thus began his initiation into the labyrinth of her expectations. Sweep the courtyard until the concrete looked freshly ironed, arrange the shoes by color, brand, and attitude, polish the window frames even when the windows weren't dirty, and always finish before her morning tea cooled. Whenever his father asked how things were going, Selina would glide forward like a swan with hidden fangs, praising Tunde's work ethic. The man, dazzled by her silky vowels, never noticed the tremor in his son's voice or the quiet bruising of his confidence. Still, Tunde endured. He found pockets of comfort in the courtyard despite its gloom. A patch of stubborn sunlight always soaked the left corner near the avocado tree. There he would crouch after chores, sketching shapes in the dust with a twig. Rockets, tall buildings, machines that whirred in his imagination like playful spirits. The courtyard might not have loved him, but it tolerated his dreams, which was enough for now. One afternoon, Selina's voice cut through the air like a blade sharpened on irritation. "Tunde, come here at once." His heart stuttered, but he obeyed. She stood in the living room, pointing at a tiny water stain on the side table. "Did you spill something?" "No, Ma. I haven't touched that table." "So, the stain arrived by miracle." Her lips curled slightly. "Clean it, and next time, don't lie." He swallowed the protest rising in his throat. Arguing with her felt like arguing with a locked door, pointless and bruising. As he wiped the wood, her phone rang and she answered sweetly, her voice dripping honey she never used on him. "Yes, darling. Of course I adore the boy. He is adjusting so well." Tunde paused his polishing. Something in his chest tightened, a knot woven of disbelief and an emotion he didn't know how to name. Her kindness was a costume she wore only for audiences that mattered. He returned to the courtyard afterward, breathing in the dusty scent of afternoon. His father's car wouldn't return for hours, and the house felt heavy, as if holding its breath. Tunde stared up at the fragment of sky visible between the roofs. It shimmered with quiet promise. "You'll see," he whispered to himself, tapping the dirt with his twig. "One day, I won't be afraid of this place." The avocado leaves rustled gently, almost approving, and in that corner of stubborn sunlight, the first glimmer of his future stirred, unnoticed by the woman who believed she had already decided his fate. The courtyard's dusk settled like a patient veil, softening the day's harsh edges. Tunde remained in his little corner, tracing invisible patterns with his twig. The earth there always felt loose, as if it held secrets that wanted to wiggle into daylight. He didn't know it yet, but that patch of ground would soon become the birthplace of a turning point. It began the next morning. Selina, wielding a feather duster like a ceremonial staff of disapproval, assigned him an impossible set of tasks before school. Dust the bookshelf, tidy the veranda, mop the corridor, water the plants that were already well hydrated, and sweep the courtyard until the soil agreed to behave. Tunde nodded silently. Silence was the only shield he had mastered. As he swept the courtyard, the broom bristles caught on something under the dust. A barely there clink. Curious, he crouched and scraped at the surface. A metal edge glimmered faintly. He dug with his fingers until he unearthed a rusted rectangular tin, the kind old photographers used to store film rolls decades ago. He looked around. The house slumbered in mid-morning calm, Selina occupied with nitpicking the curtains. He opened the tin. Inside lay a small mechanical contraption. Gears, springs, and metal coils arranged with delicate logic. It wasn't functional. Some pieces were broken, others missing, but the structure whispered possibilities. Whoever built it had tried to make something that moved with intention. A note rested beneath it, folded so many times the creases felt like scars. Tunde unfolded it carefully. Dreams are engines. Build yours. No signature, no clue. Just that line, cryptic and intoxicating. He stared at the words, feeling them spark somewhere deep inside him. Unlike Selina's sharp commands, these words didn't wound, they ignited. He traced the gears with a thumb and felt a hunger he couldn't name yet, a hunger to understand how things worked, how they came apart and came alive again. Boy! Selina's voice ricocheted through the courtyard. Tunde jumped, shoving the tin beneath the avocado roots. She kicked a layer of soil over it just as she stepped out. "What are you doing kneeling on the ground like that?" she demanded. "Just sweeping, ma." She frowned, scanning the earth. For a moment, she feared she might order him to dig it all up, but her attention drifted elsewhere. "Hurry up, and don't forget to clean the veranda again. You missed a corner yesterday." She stormed back inside, leaving behind a faint trail of cologne and irritation. Tunde exhaled slowly. As soon as she was gone, he touched the ground again, feeling the hidden tin like a buried heartbeat. That afternoon at school, his mind refused to cooperate with lessons. While the mathematics teacher chanted formulas, Tunde imagined the gears aligning perfectly. While classmates scribbled notes, he wondered how springs stored tension. While the uniforms rustled and the heat shimmered through the open windows, something in him whispered the same line from the note. Dreams are engines. On his way home, he passed the local electronics repair shop, a cramped place crammed with wires that hung like restless vines. The air hummed with old radios refusing to die. Baba Adejimi, the shop's owner, waved absently, his magnifying glasses perched at an angle that suggested he'd been negotiating with uncooperative circuits since dawn. Tunde paused. "Baba," he said, his voice tentative, "do you fix machines that don't work anymore?" Baba chuckled. "My boy, everything works. Sometimes you just haven't met the part of it that remembers how." That sentence slipped into Tunde's mind and settled next to the note like a companion. Back home, the house simmered with Selina's mood. She was in the living room, criticizing the arrangement of decorative flowers. Tunde retreated quickly to the courtyard and retrieved the tin. He hid it in his school bag, sealing its importance with a careful zip. Later that night, while his father snored softly in the bedroom and Selina rehearsed her angelic voice for telephone conversations, Tunde sat on the floor of his small room with only a flashlight for company. He opened the tin again. This time, he touched each component slowly, reverently. He examined the angles, the screws, the way one gear was meant to turn another. He didn't know the terminology, but instinct filled the gaps where vocabulary couldn't reach. He rearranged 2 gears. They fit more elegantly than before. He extended a spring. It clicked into place with a sound almost too tiny to hear, but to Tunde, it rang like a victory drum. A spark pulsed inside him, brighter than any praise he had ever earned. He didn't notice the passage of time until his flashlight dimmed. As the room sank into darkness, he whispered to the tin, "I'll fix you." The promise felt like a seed pressed into fertile ground. By the next morning, that seed had grown a little root. He woke with an idea quivering at the edge of his mind. During breakfast, Selina lectured him about crumbs on the table, but he barely heard her. The contraption called to him from inside his bag. After school, he returned to Baba Adejimi's shop with shy determination. "Baba," he said, "can you show me how to fix something? Not for free. I'll sweep your shop or run errands or clean the wires. Anything." Baba studied him for a long moment, his eyes crinkling at the edges. "Show me." Tunde revealed the mechanical piece. The old man whistled softly. "This is old craftsmanship. Someone put heart into making this. I want to fix it. Then you will need patience thicker than steel and curiosity sharper than kitchen knives." Baba tapped the gears. "Are you ready for that?" Tunde nodded. And so began his apprenticeship, unofficial but powerful, between school hours and Selina's endless demands. He swept the shop, fetched screws, learned to name parts, and listened to Baba unravel the mysteries of movement and electricity. Every day, the mechanical contraption grew less broken, and Tunde grew more certain of himself. The tin was a seed the world had hidden for him, a quiet message buried under dust and duty. And now, with every click of a gear and every new lesson, something extraordinary was sprouting inside him. The house took on a brittle tension in the weeks that followed, as if it sensed Tunde's spirit stretching beyond the narrow corridor Selina had designed for him. She didn't know what had changed, but she sensed it. Children with blooming confidence rattled her like cracked glass. Tunde had grown quieter, but not in the frightened way she preferred. His silence now carried purpose, like a lantern shielding its own flame. And Selina, who could smell disobedience the way a hawk senses movement in tall grass, grew suspicious. Her first attack came during dinner. The family was gathered around the dining table, the overhead bulb casting a syrupy yellow glow. Tunde's father, exhausted from a long day of office politics, shoveled rice into his mouth with the weary devotion of someone grateful for anything warm. Selina sat perfectly straight, as if balancing an invisible bowl on her head. "Tunde," she said, too gently, "where do you disappear to after school these days?" The fork paused halfway to Tunde's lips. He forced his heartbeat to stay calm. "I go to Baba Adejimi's shop to help. His place is near the junction." "Help," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were suspicious fruit. "Doing what?" "Cleaning, errands, just helping." He prayed she wouldn't ask further. His father nodded approvingly. "A good boy, learning responsibility." Selina smiled at her husband, but the smile never reached Tunde. "As long as it doesn't distract from his chores here." "It doesn't, ma." Her gaze flicked to him with quiet warning. Dinner ended without further probing, but the air around her hummed with something sharp. Tunde felt it in his bones. The next afternoon, just as he was about to slip out of the house, she caught him by the collar of his uniform. "Where do you think you're going?" He swallowed. "To Baba's shop." "Oh," she tilted her head. "How sweet. Unfortunately, I need you to scrub all the pots in the kitchen, every single one." "There are 13 pots," he said before he could stop himself. "So, count is one of your skills," she replied with a cold kind of delight. "Start immediately." He scrubbed until his fingers pruned and the water turned cloudy with steel scum. By the time he finished, the sun had already slipped behind the rooftops. Baba's shop would be closed. This became her new routine, inventing chores with a frequency that rivaled rainfall. Sweep the ceiling edges, rinse the curtains, rearrange the pantry alphabetically, wash the gate, wipe the footprints off the staircase even though only she wore shoes inside. Every road away from her tightened.
One evening, worn out and simmering with frustration, Tunde sat in his room staring at the mechanical contraption. He had made progress. The gears now meshed smoothly, and the springs aligned with intention. But there was one missing piece he and Baba had yet to solve, a small connector piece needed for the mechanism's heart to beat again. Without time at the shop, the project stalled. He clenched his fists. Selina wasn't just giving chores. She was trying to suffocate the one place he had discovered a sense of belonging. The next morning, Baba cornered him at school. "You didn't come yesterday," the old man said, wiping his hands on a rag that looked older than the chalkboard. "Or the day before that." "Sorry, Baba," Tunde murmured. "My stepmother, she keeps me busy." Baba's sigh rattled like a tired engine. "Busy is good, trapped is not." Those words lodged inside Tunde's mind like a pebble he couldn't shake loose. By the end of the school day, he made a decision. When he reached home, Selina was waiting with a bucket and a mop. "The veranda needs a fresh scrub. I expect it spotless." He nodded calmly, took the bucket, and walked straight past the veranda, down the corridor, out the back gate, and onto the dusty road that led to Baba Adejimi's shop. For the first time in his life, he disobeyed her on purpose. His heart pounded like a runaway drum, but his feet moved with certainty. At the shop, Baba welcomed him with a simple nod, no questions asked. Tunde worked with new determination, sorting screws, coiling wires, learning the subtle weight of different tools. When he showed Baba the contraption again, the old man studied it and smiled faintly. "You are close, very close." "How do I finish it?" Tunde asked. "You need a connector piece, not a standard one, something improvised, something created." "Created?" "Yes, there comes a moment when fixing is not enough. You must invent." The sentence rolled through Tunde like thunder disguised as wisdom. When he returned home, Selina was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, face stiff as frozen paint. "Where," she began with icy slowness, "have you been?" He told the truth, not bravely, not boldly, just simply. "I went to Baba's shop." She stared at him like he was unraveling in front of her. Her voice dropped to a growl too low for his father to hear from the bedroom. "You disobeyed me." He didn't reply. The silence between them stretched painfully thin. Then she picked up the small steel kettle from the table and slammed it down hard enough to send a sharp clatter dancing across the air. "Eat your food, and tomorrow you will not step outside this house unless I say so." But in her fury, she didn't notice the quiet embers in his expression. He wasn't afraid of her anymore. That night, lying on the thin mattress in his room, he whispered to his unfinished contraption, "I'll finish you, even if I have to carve the missing piece myself." Outside, the courtyard rustled as if shifting in agreement. Selina's cruelty had sharpened him more than she realized. Every unfair chore, every accusation, every slammed command had forged a kind of mental steel inside him. His resolve no longer trembled. Something inside him had awakened.
The first real opportunity appeared on an ordinary Thursday, a day so mundane that it could have been mistaken for any other. But for Tunde, it was a doorway swinging wide into the world he had been secretly building. It began with the notice on the school bulletin board: National Young Inventors Competition, open to ages 12 to 18. Cash prize, mentorship, and the chance to present your creation to leading engineers. Tunde's heart raced. The contraption in his room, the one that had refused to die under his fumbling fingers, suddenly seemed alive with possibility. He stared at it as if seeing it for the first time, every gear and spring now whispering, "This is your chance." That evening, Selina's temper was unusually sharp. She had discovered that he had left home again for the shop, and she hovered like a hawk over the dinner table. You spent another afternoon wondering, she snapped, her voice slicing through the air. Do you have any idea how irresponsible that is? Tunde lifted his eyes calmly. I've been working on something important. Baba Adejimi is helping me. She huffed. Important? Helping? Child, you will learn soon enough that life is about obedience, not dreams. He kept silent because arguing would only ignite another storm. But inside, a spark had been lit, a spark that would soon turn into a wildfire. That evening, after she had retreated to her own room to rehearse her soothing telephone voice, Tunde sat cross-legged on the floor, spread tools and gears before him. Every broken spring and dislodged gear was a challenge he intended to master. He walked methodically, remembering Baba Adejimi's lessons. Patience thicker than steel, curiosity sharper than kitchen knives. His hands were steady now, his mind razor sharp. Slowly, deliberately, he began constructing the missing connector. It had to be precise, almost impossibly precise. Hours passed, the clock hands crawled across the wall. Midnight crept in, bringing with it a silence only broken by the gentle click of metal meshing with metal. And then it moved. A tiny, miraculous rotation followed by another, and the contraption hummed with life. Gears turned in harmony, springs flexed and released with perfect rhythm, and a miniature mechanism danced across the floor as if it had always known it was meant to move. Tunde laughed quietly, a sound unburdened by fear or expectation. You did it to the machine, he whispered. We did it. The next morning, he brought it to school with trembling hands. The competition judges, scientists, engineers, and innovators leaned forward as he demonstrated the mechanical marvel. Every movement was fluid, almost magical. Tunde explained the invention's design, the principles behind it, and how he had improvised the missing connector. By the time he finished, the room was silent. Then applause erupted, not polite, not perfunctory, but genuine, the kind that makes the air tingle. Tunde's stepmother, if she had known, would have scowled, but in that moment no one in the world could have dimmed his light. Weeks later, the results were announced. Tunde's creation had won first prize. The judges were impressed not only by his mechanical ingenuity, but also by his problem-solving and resilience. He was offered mentorship opportunities, scholarships, and introductions to networks of engineers and entrepreneurs. Walking home that day, holding the certificate like a torch, he felt a thrill so powerful it outshone any fear Selina might conjure. He didn't rush inside. Instead, he lingered in the courtyard, letting the sunlight wash over him. The patch of sunlight he had always claimed as his sanctuary now seemed to blaze like a miniature sun. Selina, as usual, noticed something was different. She observed him from the doorway, frowning, but she didn't understand. She could see success, but she couldn't see the years of quiet determination, the nights spent fixing gears under the cover of darkness, the refusal to be broken. Tunde smiled faintly to himself. The spark had become a flame, and he knew now, without a shadow of doubt, that no obstacle, no harsh word, nor punishment could extinguish it. That night, as he lay in bed, he allowed himself a new thought, one he had never dared whisper aloud. One day, the world will see what I can do, and no one, not even her, will be able to stop it. And somewhere in the corridors of the house, Selina's laughter carried through the walls, unaware that the boy she tried to confine had already begun outrunning the night she had cast around him. Tunde drifted to sleep, the machine's rhythmic hum echoing softly in his dreams, a heartbeat of promise, of destiny, and of an extraordinary future waiting just beyond the horizon.
The years unfolded like a long, deliberate breath. Tunde's hands, once small and trembling over fragile gears, had grown capable of commanding machines, ideas, and eventually entire enterprises. His ingenuity and determination had taken him far beyond the confines of the courtyard,
and the oppressive shadow of Selena. By the time he returned to his city after completing his studies abroad, Tunde was no longer the boy who had crouched in sunlight patches. He was a young man armed with knowledge, networks, and an unshakable vision. Every invention, every venture, every calculated risk had been a step up a ladder that no one, least of all Selena, had imagined he could climb. Selena, meanwhile, had not changed. She still carried herself with the marble and vinegar poise that once intimidated Tunde. She remained in the house, polishing the same floors, rearranging the same curtains, and expecting obedience as if time had never moved. But when Tunde stepped into the city's high-rise boardrooms, she could no longer dictate the terms of his life. The first meeting with potential investors was electric. Tunde presented a revolutionary energy technology he had designed, a fusion of mechanical efficiency and sustainable innovation. The boardroom was filled with skepticism at first. Then, as the prototype whirred to life and performed flawlessly, silence fell. The investors erupted in applause. Checks were written, contracts signed, and Tunde left the room with a quiet satisfaction. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The work spoke for itself. Back home, the news of his meteoric rise reached the house like a storm. Selena read about Tunde's latest venture in the morning paper. From young inventor to industry titan, Tunde Adeyemi's empire grows. Her coffee cup trembled in her hands. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, unease. When Tunde visited the house, it was with the soft authority of someone who had nothing to prove and everything to command. Selena greeted him with the same forced sweetness she had perfected over years of appearances. My, you've done well, she said, her eyes flickering with a mixture of pride and concealed bitterness. Tunde smiled gently, the corners of his lips carrying decades of quiet victories. I've done what I needed to do, he replied. Dinner that night was different. Tunde didn't bow to her schedule or her rules. He chose the table, the dishes, even the music playing softly in the background. Selena tried to assert control, suggesting adjustments, commenting on manners, but her words fell like whispers against a wall of calm certainty. His father, who had long believed Selena's every word, now watched his son with awe and subtle regret. He had raised a titan without realizing it, a young man whose strength had been forged in the ashes of a household he had assumed was ordinary. As dessert was served, Tunde spoke. Not harshly, not triumphantly, but with the quiet authority of someone who had outgrown fear. Selena, he began, I hope you understand now. Every word you spoke, every door you slammed, every chore you assigned, they couldn't stop me. They only shaped me. Selena's lips parted, searching for a retort, a defense, but the moment had passed. Her influence had withered. The boy she had tried to confine now moved in spaces she had never dreamed he could occupy. Tunde arose after dinner and walked through the courtyard, the sunlight catching the edges of the leaves he had once used as a refuge. He could almost hear the echo of his younger self whispering from the shadows, one day they will see. And now they had. Over the following years, Tunde's empire expanded into industries that shaped cities, technologies that saved lives, and investments that redefined wealth. Every decision carried the imprint of lessons learned in hardship. Every innovation bore the patience cultivated under the quiet tyranny of a stepmother who never recognized his brilliance.
Selina lived to witness it all: the newspapers, the accolades, the invitations, the buildings named in his honor. The marble and vinegar poise remained, but the sharpness in her eyes dulled, replaced by the bitter recognition that she had underestimated the quietest child in the courtyard. Tunde, however, never sought revenge. His triumph wasn't in humiliation, it was in living fully, in proving that talent, persistence, and courage outshine cruelty. His stepmother, a character in the story of his rise, became a quiet footnote, a reminder of the obstacles he had overcome. One evening, standing on the balcony of his penthouse, looking over the city lights that stretched like constellations below, Tunde allowed himself a smile that reached his eyes. He thought of the courtyard, of the patch of stubborn sunlight, of the hidden tin with broken gears, and the old mentor who had shown him patience and curiosity. Everything had led to this. Everything had mattered. He whispered softly, almost to the wind, "I am what I was meant to be." And in the quiet, in the heartbeat of the city, the future stretched before him, vast, unbroken, and entirely his. The boy who had been caged by a wicked stepmother now sat on a throne built from the dust of yesterday, a throne no one could take, no one could challenge, and no one, not even she, had seen coming.